From State House to World Health Assembly, the distinct missions of national and international leadership in oral health care. A narrative companion to the Standards for Leadership in Oral Health Care. Authored by Robert A. Fiala and William R. Kalman. Leadership in oral health care has long been treated as a skill assimilated over time through experience, rather than intentionally defined, taught, and assessed. Unlike clinical practice, education, research, and infection control, leadership in oral health care lacks consistent standards despite its critical role in integrating these systems and guiding the profession's future. As healthcare becomes increasingly collaborative and global, dentistry must deliberately develop leadership capabilities at multiple levels. This article examines leadership at the national and international levels, using the American Dental Association's role within U.S. and global health and dental organizations as examples. It explores why these leadership contexts require distinct competencies and why establishing appropriate standards is essential to dentistry's continued influence and effectiveness. Leadership in oral health care has long been treated as a skill assimilated over time through years of committee work, election to office, and watching those who came before them, rather than something clearly defined, taught, and measured. This is unusual because almost every other part of the profession has clear standards. Clinical practice follows evidence-based protocols and infection control rules. Dental education is shaped by accreditation requirements. Research is governed by ethics review and reporting guidelines. Leadership, arguably the one skill that determines whether all these other systems actually work together, has none of this structure. As healthcare moves toward more integrated, team-based models, dentistry's failure to define requirements for leadership risks leaving the profession out of decisions that will shape its future. Writing about leadership in academic dentistry, Verma and colleagues reached a similar conclusion that change in dental education and practice is happening fast, but the profession is not deliberately building the leadership capabilities needed to guide that change. The result is a profession that trains excellent clinicians and scientists, but leaves it to chance whether those same people, once placed in positions of institutional authority, are actually ready for what that authority requires. This article looks at two of the highest and most important levels where that authority is used. Leadership at the national level, where an organization like the American Dental Association coordinates 50 state associations and their local districts, and leadership at the international level, where representatives of that same organization work with global groups, such as the FDI World Dental Federation and the World Health Organization, to advance oral health as a shared global priority. These two roles are often discussed as if they were the same thing, with international leadership just being national leadership on a larger stage. That view misses real differences between them and misses what capabilities leaders at each level actually need. This article does not list the specific standards that will be added elsewhere in this publication. Instead, it explains, in plain terms, why those standards need to be developed differently for national and international leadership, and why getting both right matters for the profession's future. The national leader as steward of a federation. To understand what makes national leadership in American oral health care different, it helps to start with the structure it operates in. The dental profession in the United States is not run through one chain of command. It is organized as a federation. A national organization sets policy direction and represents the profession to the federal government, while 50 constituent state associations, each made up of component local districts, keep significant control over their own decisions, priorities, and culture. A leader elected to national office does not command this structure so much as manage and guide it. Success depends less on driving policy and more on building lasting agreement among groups whose situations differ greatly. A busy urban district in one state and a rural district with limited access to care in another may view the same national policy in very different ways. This guiding role has become harder in recent years, not easier. Data from the American Dental Association's Health Policy Institute show the size of the practical challenges the profession faces at home, such as shortages of dental hygienists and dental assistants that have continued well past the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic, with most practicing dentists still reporting trouble hiring staff, and staffing shortages ranking among the top concerns dentists name when asked about what lies ahead. These are not abstract policy debates. They directly affect whether dental teams across the country can deliver care, and they put clear pressure on national leaders to respond in a coordinated way through licensure agreements between states, education and accreditation policy, or workforce data efforts in ways that individual state associations could not manage as well alone. As such, a national leader's job is to take a problem that is felt unevenly across 50 different states and turn it into one clear, evidence-based national response, without ignoring the real differences in how that problem shows up locally. A broader question in healthcare leadership research is what can help a group develop consensus to drive outcomes for the mission at hand. Research in nursing and health services supports this idea. Murray and Cope, writing about leadership and patient safety, argue that engaged, visible leadership directly affects whether safety systems truly protect patients. A finding highly relevant to a federation whose central purpose is to protect the patients its members serve. For national dental leaders, the stakes of this guiding role extend beyond organizational effectiveness. They influence whether standards of care, ethics, and safety remain sufficiently consistent across 50 state regulatory systems to preserve public trust in the profession as a whole. What sets the national leader's role apart most clearly from other kinds of institutional leadership is a mix of broad representation and deep policy knowledge. The national leader has to know enough about health policy, workforce economics, and regulation to work credibly with federal agencies and lawmakers, while still being accountable to a membership whose day-to-day experience differs by state and by district. Leadership at this level does not fail because of one unpopular decision. It fails when the leader loses the trust of the federation as a whole, which is when state and district leaders no longer feel that national leadership understands or reflects their situation. Keeping that trust over many years and multiple administrations, while still moving the profession's national goals forward, is the central challenge of national leadership. It is a very different challenge from the one faced by leaders working on the international stage. The international leader as a bridge between systems. If national leadership works within a federation held together by shared regulatory and professional structures, international leadership works in a space with no shared structure at all. When an ADA delegation works with the FDI World Dental Federation, the World Health Organization, or partner global health groups, it enters a space defined not by shared governance, but by negotiation among independent countries, each with its own way of financing healthcare, regulating its workforce, tracking disease, and understanding its own culture. Authority in this space cannot be handed down through policy directives. It has to be built, maintained, and sometimes lost through ongoing relationships, technical credibility, and a clear willingness to work as a partner rather than to simply push one country's model onto everyone else. What is at stake has become much clearer over the past several years. The Lancet's 2019 series on global oral health showed that oral diseases affect a very large share of people worldwide and create a heavy economic burden due to both treatment costs and lost productivity, while still receiving less attention than the problem deserves. In a companion paper in the same series, Watt and colleagues argued this neglect is not an accident, but instead a structural problem, based upon how oral health has historically been kept separate from mainstream public and universal health coverage efforts. They called for coordinated, strong action across research, policy, and professional leadership. More recent analyses using the Global Burden of Disease framework show that the overall impact of oral conditions has changed only slightly over 3 decades, suggesting that past approaches pursued alone by individual countries and professional groups have not been enough. With this background, oral health reached a milestone in 2021 rarely seen in the profession's history. The World Health Assembly, the governing body of the World Health Organization's 194 member countries, adopted Resolution WHA 74.5 on oral health, formally recognizing the global burden of oral disease and its links to other chronic conditions, and calling on member countries to build oral health workforce capacity and fold oral health into universal health coverage. The resolution led to the development of a full global strategy and action plan on oral health, adopted by the WHO for 2023 through 2030. With goals covering governance, prevention, workforce, care delivery, information systems, and research. The FDI World Dental Federation, representing over 1 million dentists worldwide, publicly welcomed the resolution as a landmark achievement and pushed for it to be fully carried out, including attention to issues such as access to affordable fluoride toothpaste and community water fluoridation in the places that need them most. 9. The American Dental Association, for its part, committed to be an active partner in following through on these global commitments. This chain of events shows exactly what sets international leadership apart from its national counterpart. The resolution did not happen because of the authority of any one country's dental association. It came out of years of coordinated advocacy among national associations, research groups such as the International Association for Dental, Oral, and Craniofacial Research, and community partners, each adding credibility and pressure within a system that runs on consensus among many countries. Looking at dentistry's role in global health more broadly, Hugo and colleagues argued that the profession's research and policy priorities need to stay actively connected to these larger global health efforts, or oral health risks slipping back into the isolation the Lancet series described. Keeping that connection requires exactly the skills that set international leadership apart, such as the diplomatic skill to build coalitions across dozens of health systems that share no common regulatory framework, the humility to recognize that a standard that works in a well-funded, insurance-based system may not be realistic in a low-resource setting, and the patience to invest in relationships that may not pay off for years. Research on how dental leaders experience this work supports this. Harnagia and colleagues, interviewing dental leaders about how they approach global leadership for the profession, found that these leaders consistently described building coalitions to expand access to oral health care as one of the hardest parts of their role, and that leadership development for this kind of work does not get enough attention within the profession. Their findings suggest leadership that can work in a truly international cross-system environment is not just national leadership performed on a bigger stage. It calls for a different set of skills altogether, with skills built around influence without authority, agreement without command, and credibility earned through long-term partnership rather than given by a title. 2 missions, 1 profession. None of this means national and international leadership are separate career tracks. In practice, they are often carried out by the same people over the course of a career, as leadership experience gained in a state or district association grows into national office and, for some, into international representation. But seeing that connection should not hide the real differences in what each level requires. National leadership succeeds by holding together a federation of 50 different states around one clear, evidence-based domestic agenda, while staying accountable to the members that agenda is meant to serve. International leadership succeeds by building lasting influence within a system of many countries that answers to no single national authority, advancing shared global goals through diplomacy, credibility, and patient relationship building across very different health systems. The cost of neglecting either mission is not the same, but both are serious. National leadership that fails at its role risks fragmentation, inconsistent standards across states, lost trust among the Federation's own members, and a weaker ability to speak with one voice to government. International leadership that fails at its diplomatic role risks something different, but just as costly: being left out of the rooms, such as the World Health Assembly, where decisions that shape the global direction of oral health are actually made, and missing the chance to help turn a global commitment, like the 2021 resolution and the strategy that followed it, into real action. The profession's credibility, both at home and abroad, depends on leaders at both levels understanding not just their own responsibilities, but the different nature of the responsibilities carried by their counterparts. This is exactly the gap this Standards for Leadership initiative aims to address. By setting out standards that are built for the specific demands of national stewardship and international diplomacy, rather than treating leadership as one single undefined skill, the profession can start to close the gap between the size of the challenges it faces and how deliberately it prepares the people who will be asked to lead through them. The evidence reviewed here, from the ongoing workforce pressures documented by the ADA's own Health Policy Institute, to the successful but still fragile global recognition of oral health secured through the WHO resolution and its follow-up strategy, makes clear that both levels of leadership matter, that they matter for different reasons, and that neither can replace the other. A profession that only leads well at home will struggle to shape its future on the global stage. A profession that only leads well abroad will find that stage hard to hold without a well-run, unified base behind it. The task now is to prepare leaders who understand which mission they are serving at any given moment and who bring to each the specific skills it requires.